All right, guys. So my special guest tonight is Dr. Jill Stein. She was a former presidential candidate for the Green Party. Welcome back, Jill. Thank you so much for joining.
Great to see you, Sabby. Really good to be with you.
All right. So before we get into the recent announcement from Dr. West's campaign, I want to go back to the beginning when the announcement was made that Peter Dow would be the campaign manager, because I remember, a lot of people were like shocked, or some people were angry because we remember Peter Dow's experience from the Bernie Sanders campaign. And there was a lot of like attacks coming towards Dr. Westway. And then you actually tweeted, FYI, I was the one who recommended Peter Dow. And I think that gave people like some type of pause. I think a lot of people were just like, oh, whoops. And so I want to start there in reference to why you made that decision in reference to selecting or recommending Peter for the campaign manager position.
So this goes back like very early days of the campaign. And, we had persuaded Cornel to run Green, and he came over and he didn't have anybody to run his campaign then. And so I had like stepped in to be acting campaign manager and brought in a treasurer and FEC compliance and, people to just like get the basics done and help him transition. And, I'm not a campaign manager. I've never been a campaign manager, and I needed help to just do a lot of practical things. And there wasn't anybody that I could call who had experience in a national scale campaign as big as this could be. So I really wanted to talk to someone who sort of knew the ropes for kind of state-of-the-art campaign stuff. And, I've run a lot of grassroots campaigns, which are great, but you're always limited by kind of state-of-the-art, which you don't know. And the Democrats and Republicans, they hoard all this stuff. And the people who know how to do it are not allowed to work with anybody else. It's a career-ending move for anybody who works in that realm to work with a third party. It's like, it's over. You're killed. You're dead. Your profession is gone. So it's very hard to get advice and support. But Peter had already burned his bridges with the Democratic Party. And he was one person I knew. He had been working with the Greens for a while. He had kind of totally rehabilitated himself. He was a total attack dog for the Democrats. And, to his credit, he grew up in war. He grew up in blood and gore. So he had Trump derangement syndrome before there was Trump. But for him, it was Bush derangement syndrome. So he was wedded to the Democrats based on the trauma of his own upbringing. But to his credit, he took these online debates seriously, and eventually over the years they changed his mind. So eventually he left the Democrats and became then a target for the Democrats, and totally smeared and attacked for everything that he did and still does by them. And he began to become our support just online. He began to do sort of digital battle on behalf of Greens. At some point, I think during 2020, he supported Sanders. And then when Sanders threw in the towel and went to, told everybody go support Hillary Clinton, Peter Dow didn't do that. And instead he went to the Greens and he started supporting Howie Hawkins. So I had some relationship with him, though I didn't know him personally, but a lot of Greens did, and felt very good about him and felt like he was trustworthy, and he had proven himself over the years. So I started calling him early in the campaign just for practical advice about, online stuff and digital stuff and things I had no clue about how to do. And he was extremely helpful and very thoughtful and very nice to work with. And as I racked my brains for other people who could fill in for the campaign, you could count them on one hand. And I tried to bring them all to the Wests and introduce them. And we had one Zoom meeting, and the West said, oh, no, he would never do. He was way too much an attack dog for the Democrats, basically to that effect. And then not another word for 3 months. And then the next thing I heard was that he had been asked to be campaign manager. So that's how that happened. I had made the introduction because he had a lot of skills, and I just thought he was someone that the Wests should know to, consider and make their own judgment and consider whether he might be useful. But
Jill,
I wasn't saying. Mhm.
What do you mean by, can you explain to people, what do you mean by looking for campaign managers in the space? Because a lot of the criticism that came that way when Peter was selected was they couldn't find anyone else. What do you mean when you say that the Democratic Party hoards those particular roles? And in reference also to third party campaigns, who was your campaign manager or Howie's campaign manager, if you don't mind?
So the campaigns that I have run in have always been grassroots campaigns. And we've always been very limited by not having the skills and the knowledge to run full bore, hard fighting national campaigns. We just didn't know what are the digital tools. And, it's a specialty unto itself. And you don't know this by running for office. You have to have done this. It's sort of learned on the job, as an apprentice, one person at a time. And there's this firewall between what you can do as a grassroots candidate, which is what I've always done. And that's the limit. You're constantly butting up against what you don't know how to do. The whole thing is just so run by digital infrastructure right now. If you don't have a handle on what those tools are, there's not like some public forum where you can find out. These are skills that are very carefully, it's like trade secrets that are really hoarded by Democrats and Republicans, and you are not allowed. You are very specifically forbidden. If you are someone who gets hired to do this stuff for Democrats, you do not dare work for a third party candidate because it will be your last job.
So this explains why, because some of the criticism I had before about the Green Party, and Justin's been on the show, and I told him, I said, the Green Party has to want to win. And I said, where's the marketing? Where's the advertising? This explains why that was limited.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. All across the board, whether it's on social media or, I don't pretend to understand the digital infrastructure and platforms that campaigns run on now. It's both communications, it's fundraising, it's networking, it is enabling community groups to find each other. There's just this whole elaborate infrastructure that really took off with Obama. And if you haven't done it, you don't have a clue how to do it or who to even talk to. It's not like this stuff is out there. There's gobs of it out there, but you're just stabbing in the dark if you haven't been an apprentice and learn how to do it. It happens, you go to campaign school by running a campaign. Basically.
So you didn't have
Democrats have their own schools, and then Greens have their schools, and their, Greens are sort of like the 1990s version. It's not the 2000s version. And so we can't do what they do. And so I really wanted to find for this campaign, I thought finally we had a candidate with the stature that we could find someone to really cross that line and help us learn how to do this.
So you didn't have,
sorry,
so
go
you
ahead.
You didn't have a campaign manager.
I had a campaign manager, but a grassroots campaign manager, not someone who knew how to do this stuff.
Okay. Not
So
someone who's
you're just operating at a whole different order of magnitude. You're doing grassroots stuff. You're not in the 21st century digital campaign.
So Jill, how did you get on the ballot in over 40 states? Because I think, and we'll get to this ballot access issue that's obviously going to come up in reference to Cornel West campaign. How were you able to do that?
The old-fashioned way. And ballot access, there's no digital shortcut to ballot access. Ballot access is, you have to raise the money, and there's all sorts of digital tools for raising money. Doing it the old-fashioned way is very hard, but we did it that way, through email and a little bit of digital stuff, but it was really kind of old-fashioned fundraising. We raised money, but the Green Party is a decentralized party. We have state level chapters in most states. It's not 50, but it's, 40, something like that. We have a lot of state chapters and then some local chapters without state chapters. So you have to work with the states in order to get on the ballot. You can buy your way on, like No Labels, a totally fake corporate front group, which is, sponsored by billionaires and millionaires in order to run centrists and pretend that they're running a different party. They're just a corporate, total fake group. How are they getting on the ballot? They don't have any grassroots network. They're buying their way on the ballot. How much are they raising to do that? $70 million is the figure that's out there. That's what they're raising. And what are they spending it on? They're not, they don't have any kind of ground game. They don't have organizers. They're not, sending out social media and press releases. They're not they're not sponsoring candidates to go to rallies. All they're doing is getting on the ballot, and very little other media stuff. And that $70 million is their budget. We got on the ballot for about somewhere around 750,000, something like that. So $1 million or under, because that's how invaluable a grassroots network is. And for Greens, fighting politically and fighting the system, you can't do this without a fight. And you have to really fight to engage ballot access. And you have to fight off the attacks of the Democrats. You have to fight rules that are intended to basically eliminate competition and stop you before you're even out of the starting gate. And Greens have engaged this fight for 20 years. And so state by state, in every state, it's different. This is part of how they keep you off the ballot. They have rules that you have to be a real policy wonk in order to follow, and they change a little bit year by year. You have to really watchdog this stuff. It takes a whole culture of ballot sovereignty. You have to own the electoral system, and you have to fight to stay in it. And then you have to collect a gazillion signatures. So it's very complicated. But if you have a group in every state who's watchdogging this stuff and really staying on top of the rules and the procedures, and they're all very complicated. They all have different rules. And sometimes you need them to get notarized, and then you need to have the signature carriers notarized. Sometimes you can have people from out of state come and help, but sometimes the rules don't allow that. The rules are unique. In every state, they're different, and it's a total quagmire. It's not something you can learn how to do in one cycle. You have to have done this. It's like, tools in the digital realm. You have to learn them by doing them. Same thing for ballot access. You can't be a new party or a new candidate and think you're going to get on. It takes really a long tradition of fighting the system and knowing how to fight it. That's how you get on the ballot.
Yeah, I want to bring up the example for people who may not remember. Matthew Ho was running as a Green in North Carolina, and he met the requirements. He got the signatures that he needed to run, and the Democratic Party came in and said that some of his signatures weren't valid, which was obviously not true, to take the Green Party off of the ballot. So what Jill is explaining is that there's all these things that you have to go through, extra work you have to do as a third party candidate just to get on the ballot. And then the Democratic Party, or in the case of libertarians, the Republican Party can decide to change the rules or remove you. That's what happened to Larry Sharp in New York when he was running as a libertarian. Quick question in reference to the Libertarian Party. How were they able to get 50 states in reference to ballot access?
They have corporate donors. In a nutshell, they have corporate donors, so they can rake in a lot of money and buy their way onto the ballot. They're not really an active grassroots party that I have seen, sometimes a little bit, but that's not like their driving force. So that explains how they get on the ballot all over the place, because they have big donors.
And that'll be the same for the Forward Party. And for, like you said, No Labels. This all makes perfect sense now. You just got to follow.
Which is why this, this ballot line, the green ballot line, it's like the one line that can really get in there and fight the fight for working people, anti-war, climate survival, the democracy crisis. If we want, skin in this game, the Green Party ballot line is how to do it. And that's why, it's a disappointment not to have Cornel doing that. But I want to explain for people why this makes sense, why it makes sense for Cornel, and why it's not over. It's not over. So yeah. Go
okay.
ahead.
Let me show the announcement video first. So a lot of us woke up to this morning, where Cornel West said people are hungry for change. I want to go ahead and play this announcement here.
We need you to be part and parcel of wrestling with this corporate duopoly, this two-party system that impedes, it gets in the way of the unleashing of the kind of policies of abolishing poverty and homelessness, of dealing with working wages, cutting back on militarism, and most importantly, trying to ensure that the best of who we are as a people can be more manifest, can be more concrete, because the crisis is real and these catastrophes are bombarding us. Please come join us.
So this is the new branding for Cornel West's campaign. And that's actually, he put here, I'm running as an independent candidate for president of the United States to end the iron grip of the ruling class and ensure a true democracy. Jill, I know you issued a statement today that represents you and Ajamu Baraka. And so a lot of people, I think, have tuned in to hear your take about this and why do you feel Dr. West will be here tomorrow, but I want to hear like your perspective as well. Why do you feel that this may be the right decision in reference to Dr. West's campaign, and how did these events transpire?
Yeah, I mean, as he says himself, he has a calling, he has a calling, he has a mission. He's been on this mission for his whole life. He really has. And his voice, is unique. He is not accustomed to being part of a complex team who's telling him that we have this agenda, we have to uphold this agenda, we have talking points, we want to be making these talking points. We have various commitments we want to fill. We have state parties that we have to work with, and each state party is a little universe unto itself. It's a lot of a team building of its own nature, and it's very hard for anyone who has not been a member of a party already to suddenly become a card-carrying member of the party in the heat of a presidential campaign. It's just really hard. I see Cornel as an incredibly gifted and powerful voice, but he's not been a candidate before. And this is a lot to learn in one campaign, a lot to learn very fast. And people don't necessarily develop those allegiances right away, and maybe not necessarily ever. And when we embarked together, it was a bit of an exploration. It always is. When new candidates start, they're often starting their exploratory campaigns, and they will call it an exploratory campaign for weeks or months sometimes. So I sort of view this as an exploratory campaign, and where Cornel is on a very steep learning curve as a new candidate, and his power is in like the uniqueness and liberty of his voice. One of his phrases commonly is that I'm a free Black man, and I'm going to speak from my heart, and I'm going to follow my heart and my vision. That's his power. And as I saw this roll out over the weeks and months, I just saw how Cornel was kind of feeling caged. And now this is my own words, here, totally my own words, but I hear him so much as his own person who so values his freedom, his inspiration. He talks about being a jazz musician. You got to be able to improvise. Hard to do that, when you've got this whole orchestrated team that's supposed to be doing this thing together. So as much as I really want to be working with Cornel and on his team and his on our team, sometimes it's just not the right time. And I feel like Cornel needs to be free. He needs to be free as a candidate. But if you're running with a political party that has like 25 or 30 or 35 little subdivisions and you have to court them all, it's not what candidates really want to be doing unless they have really come to believe that this is about building an organization just as much as it's about talking to voters directly. Cornel really wants to talk to voters directly. He should be able to do that. And I think he just began to feel like he also had to do this whole thing with the organization. Now you'll hear from him himself, and he'll do a much better job of telling you why this is right for him. But I can tell you, as Greens, having done this twice, you're expected as a presidential candidate, you're expected to be there hand-holding the state parties, helping them fight this fight, helping them do their ballot and petition drives. And the work is very much part of the campaign. It's not just, speaking to voters on the issues that you want to talk about. A lot of this is just being a servant of the movement in ways that you don't really want to do, but you have to do it. The candidate sort of has to keep turning the crank. And that's right for some people, and it's not right for other people. And it's very hard to come to terms with all of this all at once. So I totally understand where he's coming from, and I want him to be him.
So I want to make sure I'm understanding what you're saying. So when you mentioned that the Green Party, it was explained to him that as a party, or as a team, like you have talking points, et cetera, and he wants to speak directly to the voters. Is that to say that as a Green Party presidential candidate, because what some people may hear with that statement is that as a Green Party presidential candidate, that they can't just kind of go off on their own free will, that they have these talking points that is coming from the party or the team that's working on the campaign with the party, and that's what they have to abide by. And then also as a Green Party presidential candidate, does that mean that he cannot speak directly to the voters?
Yeah. So let me just say that when you're running as a Green, and I imagine with other parties, you're going to hear from people. So at the end of the day, you can do what you want and you have the power to do that. But you're going to hear from people that you're looking to for their support. You're looking for their help, whether it's, messaging, whether it's support on social media, whether it's holding rallies, whether it's, getting out and collecting signatures. You are part of a team. And people are going to make demands of you like you're making demands of them. That's just how a complicated organization works. You can go off and do your own thing. And, most candidates do that to some degree. But that dialogue is still going to surround you. And you have to tell people, no, I'm not doing it that way. Or not answer them at all. But there is this presumption that you're working as a team. And so you've got to negotiate that. And some people have been doing that for a long time. For myself, being in the Green Party, that's expected. I don't expect things to be otherwise. And I know that there are going to be a lot of expectations floating around that I need to interface with. Or maybe I need to educate people and tell them why, why we don't use certain language, like why among Greens, for example, there's a lot of objections if you call Putin a gangster. Some people won't like that. Like people on RBN won't like that. If you're calling one side a gangster but not the other side a gangster, and you're not calling Joe Biden a gangster or a dictator or whatever, you're going to hear from the party about how you're addressing the war or NATO or other things. And there are a lot of sensitive issues out there, and you're just going to hear from people about anything that's hot button. And there's a lot of hot button stuff. So sometimes you have to educate people. I tried to make this point based on the views that I think most of us share in the Green Party, that there's no good guys in the Ukraine war. Mm-hmm. And it's not okay to just demonize Putin without recognizing, this is a provoked war. I'm sorry, this is not an unprovoked war, shall we say. It's a criminal and murderous war, but it's part of a bigger criminal and murderous imperial project. It's a response to that. And so I don't like criticizing one part of this without acknowledging the other part. The whole system is very corrupt and violent. And I'll get a lot of pushback from Greens if I don't do that, which is fine with me because I'm in the same place. But, there's a lot of this dialogue that's going on constantly around these many hot button issues where we are taking a stand because we have to. And if you're not accustomed to that kind of vigorous back and forth, it can really grate on your nerves for people who are new to this and they're not comfortable, with the constant little fist fights going on. And, that's just part of being in a political party. There's a lot of dialogue and you're having a lot of debates all the time. Some people find that really annoying. And I think it's hard to just be plunked down in the middle of that, where you're really depending on a lot of people for their support, fundraising, ballot access, communications, all kinds of stuff. You need their support, so they're going to ask it from you too. And that's just the way the game is played in large political coalitions. I mean, I myself came to this as an advocate. I was not a political person. I was an advocate. I was trying to help build coalitions to shut down coal plants was kind of the first big action. Or before that, it was to get money out of politics in Massachusetts when we had a referendum on clean elections. And so I got used to that you need coalitions if you're actually going to get stuff done. And then there are various ways you can try to do it, but you have to have working partners. You can't just do it from your own kind of starting point. Numbers really count. And if you're going to actually get stuff done, it can't just be this month. You want that coalition to stay together and to keep working together. And like around clean elections, we had a coalition which was public health people, it was labor, it was environmental people, it was democracy reform. There were all those groups that were working together. And for me, it was like a learning experience on how we need coalitions, but we need coalitions that aren't just like overnight coalitions. They're here for the long haul because these battles don't end, even if you get your referendum passed, which we did with clean elections. We passed our referendum and then it was repealed by the Democrats on a voice vote in committee in the legislature. So it was just like a demonstration that your coalitions cannot be just for the moment. They really have to be for the long haul. And that's when I began to think, oh, so maybe that's what political parties are about. They're about coalitions that cohere over time and over geography, so that they stay together and you can build. And that's when you start to get somewhere, But if you haven't come up through that, if you're more an academic and you're talking about ideals and visions and stuff like that, it's not the same as being in the fray and being kind of in the trenches where you got to build these coalitions in order to get stuff done, in order to make a material difference in people's lives.
So it kind of sounds like, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but it kind of sounds like he couldn't be himself.
That was my concern. Yeah. And in order to be himself, maybe, I have no doubt it's easier to be yourself if you're an independent. And, and I think he was just, yeah, I can't speak for him, but that was like my perception, that Cornel West needs to be Cornel West and not worrying about party dynamics. And, he kind of said as much in one of his statements too, he wanted to deal directly with the people, not with party dynamics. So, there's an upside of that and there's a downside of that. The upside is you can be more yourself, but the downside is that you don't have a bigger team, especially on ballot access. And that's where I fear, this is going to be a really tough move for him. But, I really value his voice in this race. And I think he's done a huge, favor delivered a huge benefit to the Green Party by being with us for some months and just having this working relationship, inserting his voice into the race. In a way, he's been testing the water. And, I think the reception has been really great. I mean, he's had all kinds of challenges for coming into the race sort of late and without prior planning and all that. And I think Peter Dow has really been doing some very good work with the campaign. And had he had a manager like that at the outset, it would have been a whole different ballgame. But I think he's gotten, much more specific. I think he's gone further to the left, gotten much more concrete about the agenda, at least from what's up on the website now. I think this is moving stuff in the right direction for him.
Yeah.
That's really great.
Eric, can you pull up the website, the new website, please? Because so I guess what I'm trying to understand is, because I noticed this website is very different when I look at the platform now. I feel like it's more left, more like to the left. I feel like it's more detailed.
Yep.
And I'm kind of curious, is that something, when I pull up this platform here for people, is this something that he could have been able to do through the Green Party, or are some of these issues on the platform a no-go for the Green Party?
Oh, no, he absolutely could have, but he did not have the support. He did not, from my perspective, now you may hear differently from him, but from what I saw, the campaign was not, you can't have an organized campaign without a campaign manager. And otherwise you just keep going in circles and no one is really calling the shots. And I think Peter Dow has done a really great job of whipping this campaign into a real organization. They still have a long way to go, but what you see reflected in the website now is a much more coherent game plan.
Yeah, so I just want to show people, and we'll go over this tomorrow night, more detail when Dr. West is here, but this is a big difference from what I've seen before in a positive way. There's a whole section here about economic justice, which is the first thing that's mentioned. One of the things that really stood out to me, national $27 minimum wage with special considerations for specific geographies where $27 an hour would not be enough. I'm just naming off a couple of things. We're not going to go through the whole thing. National Jobs Program is another one. End to Wall Street mass real estate holdings and marketization of human rights. Another one that really stood out to me, which told me he's been listening to some of the things that we said. Establish federal public banking institutions to fund public infrastructure and green reconstruction. This is something that we've been heavily pushing, at least over on this show. We've been heavily pushing about the importance of public banking. Then he has a section for worker justice here, which again, it's very detailed. Environmental justice. He also has health justice, and this is important. Go beyond Medicare for all towards true health justice. I think that's what a lot of us have been saying. At this point, we need something a little bit further than Medicare for all. He has a whole section on racial justice, which is also important. Transformative justice, protect free speech, enforce whistleblower protections, and stop the prosecution of those who expose government corruption. And then there's also education justice, and LGBTQIA plus justice, gun violence justice, immigration justice, and global justice. Dismantle the U.S. empire, slash the bloated military budget, disband NATO. Like, these are things I think a lot of us do agree with. So that was something I did notice, like, wow, like I do think the platform is better now. Like, just being honest.
There was no platform before. There was none. And we had several of us within the campaign were advocating for this for a long time. We did not have a campaign manager who could really pull all the pieces together and clarify that this is what needed to happen. We were not able to move forward on platform, on events, on press. Really, the campaigns will always be a mush without a campaign manager and without the tools to do this stuff. And there's that, what you saw up there, that is kind of a standard Green Party platform. There's nothing there that hasn't been in our campaigns routinely. And this should have happened from the beginning. And there are all kinds of reasons why it couldn't happen. But basically, without a a campaign manager to say, here's what we're doing, here's who is doing it.
Right.
Yeah. I mean,
You have to have
basically
someone
say,
driving
it
the
was not organized. The campaign was not organized. There's no way it could be organized. And there were those of us who were screaming for a campaign manager for months. And the Wests needed to feel very comfortable with the person that they hired. Now, I'm not sure exactly how they got comfortable with Peter Dow because they weren't talking with him. Maybe it was process of elimination. I have no idea. I wasn't party to it. So, I'm just really glad for him that it's happened. I don't think, I think it would have been great if Dr. West felt like he didn't have to go independent at this point. It's unfortunate because now he's got a great platform, but he'll have a very hard time getting on the ballot.
Why not just let him, I mean, if it costs, you a candidate who was probably one of the most popular candidates from the Green Party, why not just, push back on party leadership and say, let Cornel West be himself?
Oh, absolutely. If we had had a clue that it was going on, but there really wasn't much said about it. So there was no dialogue about this. I didn't hear about it until it was after the fact. So,
Okay. Jill,
unfortunately, I think those decisions just got made internally.
How have some people been receptive to, or have, in reference to Dr. West's campaign in the Green Party? It's apparent to me there have been a couple of Green Party members who have gone on to left independent media shows, and they have actually been attacking Dr. West's campaign. The moment he stepped in to the Green Party, they've been very vocal about this, and they've actually been trying to get other people. Now, I do know there are a couple other people that are running as well. One of them is coming on, I think next week on the show to run against Cornel West. And they were very outspoken about the fact that they did not want Cornel West running through the Green Party, particularly because of his past connection with the People's Party and being a part of on the board or advisory board of the People's Party. So this is like the whole People's Party stuff that carried over into the Green Party. And it was really disturbing to me to see that there were Green Party members who were actively working against Dr. West's campaign on multiple platforms on left independent media. And I have to ask, did you experience any type of pushback, so to speak, from members of the Green Party that were not happy about this run with Dr. West?
Well, I can say that during my own run, I had plenty of pushback from members of the party. This is just how it works. It is a nominating process. You have to compete in a primary, and you're going to have opponents. And that's just kind of how the democratic process works. You have opponents, and they try to, stop you in any way that they can. They don't represent the party. They're just talking for themselves, and there's going to be a lot of chatter out there. And, it's like the general election. There are going to be candidates who are really contesting, and that happens. The Green Party has a primary, and we do not have a coronation. We have a nomination, and you have to compete. So I don't regard that as a problem. You're going to have some people with really ridiculous, crazy ideas, and best not to pay them any attention. If they don't give them a platform, if you think that they're nuts. And I don't see that as having really hurt Dr. West. I don't see him as bothered by, occasional opponents. I don't think you have to protect your candidate from criticism and all that. I think that's just part of the process, and that's a healthy democracy. And that was part of my race for sure. All my races, there were always people who kind of came out of the woodwork and would come out every election. Suddenly we would have these presidential candidates or self-described presidential candidates who had zero credibility in the party, zero experience. And, they would come out and try to, promote their own candidacy and tear yours down. And that's just the way it goes. And there's very little that you have to do to deal with them. Like there may be one debate or something, but now the party they have higher standards for you can't become a recognized candidate until you have a whole lot of people who sign your petition. You have to show that you're capable of doing media. You have to have some media skills, website. There's just a number of criteria that you have to pass. You have to check off the boxes in order to become a candidate. And then once you have recognized candidates, then there might be 2 debates, something like that. So it's not a humongous big deal. It's a totally reasonable process. And I don't think that's the problem. And I just want to say that Dr. West is going to remain in the race. He's made a decision here, which many of us do not think is strategic. And unfortunately, we didn't have a chance to really have dialogue before that. And that's too bad. But that's Dr. West's prerogative. And if that's the route that he wants to pursue for now, he has to do that. We'll have the benefit of still having his voice in the race, but I think we're going to have to do the work of providing an alternative platform to ensure that this agenda is carried loud and strong by the Green Party in hopefully a 50-state campaign and into the general election. So the fight is not over. And, Dr. West has been a part of many presidential races. I hope he will continue to be in whatever form, whether as a candidate or as a spokesperson. I hope that he's going to continue to be heard loud and strong, and that he will find the best venue for his voice to be the most powerful that it can be for him.
What's next for the Green Party in reference to moving forward? I know I've interviewed Jasmine Sherman. She came on at that time. She was running as an independent. From what I understand, she's a part of the Green Party now. And I believe Davi should be coming on next week. What is next for the Green Party? Because I do want people to understand that there are multiple people. It wasn't just Dr. West that was running with the Green Party.
And the Green Party nominations are not over either. In fact, I don't think there are any officially recognized candidates yet. So the process is still open, and some of us are, looking around and talking to other candidates. And now that there's a big gap to be filled, I'm hoping that we can get an experienced candidate, or maybe 2, into contention here, so that we can maintain the momentum and, in fact, build it even stronger, because we do have a very big, diverse team over many states, and we need a candidate who can engage with that process and, really power it up. And that's what many Greens are interested in doing right now. And so we're just beginning to have these conversations about what experienced candidates can step up to the plate here. Because, I think we saw that in this race. There is so much hunger right now, for a workers' peace, climate, democracy candidate. We need that badly, and people really get, like Joe Biden just resumed student debt at a time when 60% more than that are already, living paycheck to paycheck. And 44 million young people are locked into student debt, living paycheck to paycheck for the most part. And now they got to come up with an extra $500 a month or something. I mean, what is this going to do to people? This is just madness. And 24 million people potentially just got laid off of Medicaid, because the COVID extension was needlessly terminated. Yep. Just take your pick. 40% of renters are up to their eyeballs in rent, just trying to keep a roof over their head. They're spending 30% of their income, which is staggering, because how do you begin to pay for food and transportation if 30% of your income already is going to rent? And that's 40% of renters right there off the board, and rent support and eviction moratoriums and things like that have basically just gone by the wayside. Count them off. This was the hottest year on record, and we have droughts and horrific storms and water systems that are failing, and we're sending $140 billion to Ukraine, to inflame a war that is already bringing us to the brink of a nuclear catastrophe. And now we're accelerating that war and spreading it over, into China and Taiwan. It's like, this is just effing unbelievable. We really need a party for working people and for peace and for the planet. People are exploding, and we need to be in contention. And people are hungry for this. And we know from the numbers that 50% of people want, 62% of people want an independent party, and twice as many people identify as independent as do Democrat or Republican. So the rebellion is here. The rebellion is here, and it needs to be heard in this election, loud and clear, all the way through. And there's an uprising, and it's in full swing right now, and it needs to get even stronger in this election. And that's what the Greens, have a responsibility to carry into this election, because we are the one party that can bring this into the presidential debate, and we have to do that.
I think what people have to understand, what's very different this time around versus like when Jill ran, there is no Democrat primary debate this time around. So Marianne is still running through the Democratic Party, but just something to keep in mind. This is not going to be like we go into next year and we're going to see Democrat primary debates. You'll see the GOP ones, which we have already been covering, but you're not going to see a Democrat primary debate, which means that more attention is going to be on these independent and third party candidates. If you think you're hearing a lot about RFK now, wait till next year. If you think you're hearing a lot about Cornel West now, wait till next year. And Dr. Kesheev is also running, as an independent as well. So I think that this is the time that I think a lot of people were waiting for to really like shake up or disrupt, this duopoly, because Joe Biden is not doing a good job. Last poll I saw showed Trump beating Joe Biden. Trump's way ahead of every candidate that's running a part of the GOP primary. So it's obvious right now, it looks like it's going to be Biden and Trump again, a rematch. And then a lot of people are just unsatisfied with the two-party system, and they want to support third-party independent candidates. That's why this is so incredibly important, because this could be that moment.
Yeah, absolutely. And, when they tell us as third parties or independents that we're spoilers, it's really it's really important to point out to them that this spoiling, you need to go back to 2010, because that's when they lost 1,000 seats in the state legislatures. They lost 64 seats in the U.S. House. They lost 12 in the Senate and 13 governorships. Where were the third parties to blame that spoiling on, right?
Yep.
They spoil it. The Democrats are spoiling this for themselves by abandoning working people, who have in turn abandoned them. That's what's going on here. That's the answer to the spoiler problem. This is not about suppressing democracy and suppressing candidates who actually have the solutions to these problems that the duopoly has created. So, people just need to tune out this spoiler smears and insanity. That's just the defense of the power holders who are trying to hold their competition at bay. That's all that's about. It's really, the system is really spoiled, and it's going over the cliff right now. And if we don't stand up to fight back, who else is going to do it? It's like Frederick Douglass is saying that power concedes nothing without a demand, never has, never will. We are that demand. Without us, there is no demand. So there is no shame here. Just forget the voter blaming and shaming. This is really about voters stepping up to demand that we have a future we can survive in. And if we don't demand it, we're not going to get it. And we're headed over the waterfall right now. So, clock is ticking, time to stand up and, go to the Green Party ballot access page, in fact, and show some love and you can help ensure that this process of 50 state ballot drive continues. And, that's how we're going to do it. And sign up and volunteer, and let's do what this time, our historic moment really demands that we do now.
Yeah, two more things, Jill. Roger Meadows, thank you for this, said, Doc, he means Dr. Stein. I think the Greens should consider prioritizing CBIs. He's talking about ballot initiatives, preferably as amendments over what politicians you will run to get the policies that you want. Now, Jill, we're both in Massachusetts. We're very familiar with ballot initiatives and how it's worked for people in this state. This is something that Roger has been pushing very heavily. Like, he was wondering if there could be some type of collaboration with the Green Party or any third party, actually pushing for those ballot initiatives to get some of those things accomplished, like we have in Massachusetts.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And it's been very much, I think, a part of Green priorities is to push ballot initiatives, especially like around ranked choice voting or getting money out of politics. There's just really critical stuff that will never move through legislatures as we now know them. So absolutely, Roger. Yeah, that's just a fundamental part of a democracy agenda for sure.
And Jill, one more question. Could you please answer this question for everyone? Because I've said this before, but people continue to ask. Any plans for you to run for president or any political office in the near future?
Yes. Now, which office? I don't know, but this is a conversation that's now happening in great intensity. And I think one of the things coming out of Cornel's legacy here is how important this race is and how much people really want. People are in rebellion now. There's just a full-scale rebellion taking place. And I was actually a little, sort of not enthusiastic about a presidential run, and thought it made a lot more sense for us to just pause that strategy because it tends to be so all-consuming, and instead focus. And I was very interested in a congressional race myself. And then I got swept up because I thought, whoa, this is so exciting for Dr. West to be running as a Green. And so I spent like 4 months on that. And I'm really glad that I did. And I greatly value every minute of it and greatly value everything he's bringing to the race. But now it's clear that we need a Green to run this. And I would not have pushed this and promoted it had Cornel not been here. And now that he's vacated, now the question is, now what? And I think we can't just back off now. I don't think we can back off because we've seen how absolutely critical this is. So I'd say stay tuned, and maybe we'll talk again in a month and see what's going on then.
Oh, snap. So I stand corrected. I stand corrected because I told people, I said, Jill said she can't run. She's busy. She got other stuff going on, but I stand corrected. So we'll have to stay tuned.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's a whole new ballgame right now. And a lot of conversations taking place. So I just say, be a part of that conversation and let's see where it goes.
All right. Well, Dr. Jill Stein, thank you so much for coming on. Always a pleasure.
Likewise, Sabby. Thank you. Hold the fort. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Right. Bye. Well, I was not expecting to hear that. So that's interesting news, guys. So stay tuned. Maybe we'll hear some news, right? Let's show that poll. Can we show the poll, Eric? I'm sorry. I can't stop laughing. I don't know if I can have a straight face now. Thank you for this poll. Thank you for the poll results. All right. We took a poll tonight. Dr. West should run as a ... And I said, should he run as a Democrat? 3% said Democrat. Should he run as a Green? 29% said Green. Should he run as an independent? 43% said independent. And then there was the option of, I just don't know. And 25% of you said, I don't know. And I appreciate that on the real. If you don't know, you don't know. I'm not going to be one of those, teachers that's like, you have to give an answer. Like, you know how some teachers used to ridicule like students that would say they don't know? Like, no, if you don't know, you just don't know. That's 1,277 votes. So thank you so much for that.